Yeah, I first and foremost, thanks for the time to present here. I think the idea from Eunice as well is absolutely great. So it's good to give her a little bit more time to present. You're doing great stuff. We're doing something completely different, and I just wanted to at least highlight exactly what we are doing. I'll try to keep it as brief as possible, and at the end of the presentation, I'll also share my contact details and the contact details of the firm, so you can start following us a little bit. Um, Look, we are a retail investment platform. We're really trying to make investments accessible, intuitive, and first and foremost affordable for the millennial generation. Also, Gen Z is included in that, to be honest, because if you look at what's now currently happening in the especially the European market, but it's happening actually all around the world, is that we have a new generation now that is actually worse off financially than any generation before. And with this, I'm of course referring to the millennial generation, but and the Gen Z generation as well. What's happening is that driven by low interest rates, unstable pensions, the gig economy, increasing house prices, there is a situation now that people are struggling to build up wealth. Inflation is significantly higher than the return that you get on your savings account. So this has caused two-thirds of all the millennials, at least, to worry about their financial future. And we're trying to create a solution for them that can still help them build up wealth for the future. I just mentioned it before. If you look at the traditional routes of building up wealth, like a savings account, they don't longer work. Because effectively you're losing money. The interest rate is significantly lower than the inflation rate that you will get on your savings account. But next to that, there's also a wealth tax, for example, in certain countries. So people are struggling to build up wealth, especially that younger generation. And like I said, it's driven by the negative interest rates. But also, if you look at a simple metric, which is the total retirement savings as a percentage of GDP per country in Europe, you'll see that in mainland Europe, the percentage is like a low double-digit number. So we're talking about 15% of retirement savings as a percentage of GDP, which is extremely low. And obviously, due to the aging population, the younger generation needs to basically carry the burden for paying the pensions for the older generations to a certain extent. And that older generation is aging significantly more than the total population of the younger generation. Well, in the end, there's a huge gap there. So also a pension is becoming very unstable. So that's why we wanted to create a more sustainable solution where people can really focus on building a financial future in a way that is fair, but it's also in a way that basically is sustainable. And this is what I would like to explain here in this presentation. But before I do and deep dive into these nitty-gritty details, let me first explain a little bit about some details around this younger generation, because I would like to share some insights, at least, about who is actually millennial generation. The millennial generation is significantly different in comparison to the older generations. We grew up with, and I'm a millennial myself, so that's why I'm mentioning we. We grew up with newer technology developments. We grew up in an environment with a low interest rate, tech savvy, very focused on discovering new systems, new tools, and very open to multi-bank, for example. These are all characteristics that are different from what you see in the older generations. Also, hopping jobs, for example, it's all completely new. It's a generation that's between the age range, if I include Gen Z, between 20 or also 18 maybe, up until 45, roughly 40, 45. And this is the generation that effectively is the future of if you look at wealth for the future. And I would just like to share some insights with regards to this next generation's attitude towards managing their financials. There are a few key principles to keep in mind, and I would like to mention three of them. It's how they deal with savings. That's the most important one. But also how they approach investing in the future, and how you can make sure that you're going to be in control yourself and build a better financial future for not just yourself, but also for the world itself. First one, the savings account. Europe always used to be a very savings-driven culture. People just basically made money by compounded interest, get a certain return of that, and that was for a lot of people also even their retirement. That doesn't work anymore, and therefore you see also that 75% of all the young Europeans do not see any point of opening a savings account ever, and this is a big statement. Because savings accounts are often the foundation of any bank, and that's now significantly changing. So they're looking at other ways to deploy their capital, either by spending it or obviously by building up wealth in an alternative way. And if we look at building up wealth, people like to do that for the long run. You see that if you look at the investment horizon of the millennial, that nearly 40% of that next generation have an investment horizon of 20 to 30 years, which is relatively long. It's almost closer to their retirement, right? You have also the FIRE movement driven by the millennials generation as well, where people would like to, of course, be financially independent and retire early. Almost 70% of Gen Z and almost 65% of millennials, they also apply a diversified investment strategy. So they're looking at not just the stock market, which used to be the place to deploy your cash or deploy your capital to build up wealth, but now also obviously looking at cryptocurrencies, for example. ETFs are on the rise. So these are all other venues or ways in the financial markets to diversify your portfolio. And the most important thing is that actually more than 70% of young investors, they want to be in control and want to help build a better financial future, not just for themselves, but also for the world. So especially investing in ESG, which is something that we really trying to push and trying to explain why it adds value, not just for yourself and your own portfolio, but also for the world in general and overall sustainability. Really want to make sure that people understand that. And that's actually the role that a fintech company should also play. One of the most important ways to get started as a fintech firm in making sure that people actually start using investments in the right way is to educate them. And of course, I mentioned here that knowledge is power, but education is actually on the foundation, the forefront of anything that you want to do as an investor. So we're trying to really push that as a fintech firm as well. Like we have created an in-house editorial team that creates content and news, for example, ourselves, that is applicable to this new generation and applicable towards creating sustainability, real-time news, but also a large learning center, a knowledge center, where people can go through a step-by-step program to understand how should I invest, how do I create a diversified portfolio, and how do I build up something that adds value for the future, not just for myself, but also for the world. Another thing is fintechs need to understand the financial needs of the customer. If you look at purely how the demographic looks like, a lot of people actually want to invest, but never actually did it. So therefore, we're on the forefront of them. I think something really great, because a lot of people want to invest, but it's just too complex, it's too expensive, and it's very inconvenient. Nowadays with a mobile solution, with the Instagram generation and the UI UX that's in line with what the Instagram generation expects, and with an affordable solution by creating a platform where you can create a very cost-efficient approach to using the newest technologies. You can basically get that cost benefit and give that back to the customer, which is something that I believe is something that a new generation fintech firm should do. And also, it's at the basis of creating a sustainable company. Last but not least, and this is of course coming back from all angles, as a fintech firm, you need to make sure that all commercial realities are aligned with those of your customer. So basically, if you make sure that there's no conflict of interest with regards to your offering, if customers make money, they build up wealth, it's good for them. It's also good for you as a company. Obviously, you create loyal customers and you can grow with them. If people invest more in sustainable solutions, how can we make sure that we are commercially aligned as well? Is that more beneficial for us. Now, making sure that all these things, you all tick all these boxes, is actually quite critical going forward for a fintech company. And that's also one of the reasons I wanted to present at the NOAH conference, because this is something that I think is very critical. Now, to wrap things up, why take our word for it? Of course, you should download the application. You can take a look yourself. This is one of the reasons we think we've created a platform that really adds value for the new generation and can really make sure that we disrupt the investment market. One of the few items I would like to highlight here is that we have created a solution that's very flexible, not dependent on any third parties whatsoever, but also making sure that therefore the infrastructure is built in such a way that it's very cost efficient, and we can give those costs back to the customer to help them build a sustainable future. Good. Follow our journey. Of course, there is a lot of stuff happening. We'll launch some very important features very soon. Hope I was kept it in a 10-minute time frame. I tried to do my best.